introduction to ThoughtWorks itself. Then our panelists will give the presentation on effective strategies for distributed testing, and then, as I said, there'll be a Q&A session at the end. So ThoughtWorks is a company that's been around for 18 years, and we're the custom software solution experts. We help our customers deliver strategic applications, whether we build them or we help our customers build them to deliver value to their business and to their customers. The CEO likes to say we're big enough to trust and small enough to care. We have employees all over the world with 20 offices and over 1,600 people. I believe actually it's closer to 1,800 now. $200 million in revenue. We do onshore, offshore, consulting, and delivery. And we have a product division. Obviously, I'm head of product for ThoughtWorks Studios that sells ALM solutions. So where do we have the most impact? Our expertise is in, again, helping people build strategic applications. So if you're trying to develop a new business model or build something core to your business, we're the people that can help make that possible. And we specialize in transformation around things like agile software development and recovery of projects that are in trouble and not meeting the business goals. So we bring the right approach, the right techniques, the right ways thinking about software development, the right tools to bring to bear on the problem that solve what the challenges people face in software development, and particularly around agile software development. Bring the right people and the right place, whether that's onshore, nearshore, not shore, or offshore. We're different because we have been helping customers do this for almost 20 years now, and we have a fair amount of understanding of the different problems people face. We have a track record of delivering large projects, giving actionable advice, being a partner in your business, and really pushing some of the concepts that have pervaded software excellence in the past 20 years. We also have, again, a breadth of offerings around from things like consulting to, again, tools, so that we have a full range of capabilities to bring to bear. So now I'm going to introduce the presenters for today. Anand Bagmar, who is a lead consultant in ThoughtWorks. He's been testing for over 11 years. And Manish Kumar, who is the testing practice lead for ThoughtWorks India. And he's been testing for over 15 years. Anand?
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone on this call. I'm Anand Bagmar. I'm a tester. My interest and passion for software quality and test automation has taken me on various interesting journeys in my career. In this time period, before ThoughtWorks, I've had various opportunities to work for organizations like WebMD, Borland, Microsoft, AmberPoint. Along with core testing activities, I've done product support, client interactions, process setups, system administration, basically whatever it takes to get a quality product shipped out. I've been in ThoughtWorks since over 2 years now. I'm a tester here. I'm a hands-on tester, and I'm involved in all various aspects of manual or automation testing, training, consulting, and practices.
Hi, everyone. I'm Manish. In my 15 years of industry experience, I spent 9 years practicing testing on both distributed and co-located agile teams. And in my last 9 years of association with ThoughtWorks, I've helped multiple projects and plans in implementing agile testing strategy across multiple domains and technical business and technical domains.
So what is this session about? We know a lot of organizations operate testing centers of excellence and the like, which create situations where test and delivery teams are not physically co-located. We do not advocate or recommend this approach. This session is about teams which, due to various reasons, are not seated under the same roof or in the same room. These teams are almost self-sufficient in a way. Each team has developers that are building functionality and QA team members that are testing what is being built. In addition, these teams may also have business analysts to guide them and maybe project managers to make sure development is on track and issues are identified and mitigated at the right time with the correct people. That said, because the teams are split in different locations, be it the same building, city, or different cities, countries, continents, everyone is still working on the same product. Thus, integration of the functionality developed by these teams into one product is crucial to be done correctly. That means there is more to testing than what is done by each team for what they develop. A couple of disclaimers. The tips and strategies we are going to talk about are based on our experiences, based on what we have seen and done well, and more importantly, what we have learned from what has not gone very well. The first thing, one-size-fits-all solution is not what it is. Whatever practices and tips we share with you needs to be applied within the context. And more importantly, evolution is the key to any practices or processes you set up. I like to think of an example over here. You cannot build a bridge by laying its surface at the same time as you're building its foundation. You have to go step by step. Of course, you have to keep the big picture in mind. That said, the business objectives of software development have not changed, whether it's co-located teams or distributed teams. Business still wants to have rapid releases to cash in on market opportunities or various reasons. So time to market is crucial. And of course, if it's not a quality product, it's not going to get them any value.
So, in our earlier webinar on emerging paradigms of testing, Kristan Vingrys spoke about an inside-out approach to testing. I'm going to recap the principles that matter for implementing the inside-out approach. And later on in this webinar, we are going to extend this principle in the context of distributed teams. I'm going to talk about practices, tools, and tips that allows us to use the principles on distributed teams. So the first principle Kristan Vingrys talked about is building the quality in. We at ThoughtWorks believe testing should focus on building quality in rather than testing it in. And that means removing the cost of fixing the defects and not just reducing the cost by preventing it. Find mistakes early and prevent them from becoming prevalent. And tests become executable specification and drive the development. The next principle we are going to talk is involving everyone. Basically get better tests through diverse input and the team looking after the test. Also, this stops over-the-wall syndrome that results into gap in expectation between different roles and the resulting surprises. Another principle is about generating instant feedback. This helps in providing predictability in the software development cycle by finding and fixing issues closer to the event that caused the problem. Acceptance test-driven development, running tests in a CI build pipeline, pairing on the dev box are some of the practices that help achieve this. Another principle is tests are an asset of the product and not just the project. This allows reuse of tests across various projects. The next principle is about fast delivery into production. And this principle is all about tests should not become last hurdle to cross and this is achieved by testing throughout the project. Then there should be a clear and consistent view of testing across projects. And there should be simple reporting to help make decisions and navigate the project. The testing should also help business to optimize value. It should not just be insurance. It should be fit for purpose, help drive new features and functionality. So these are the principles we talked about in the last webinar. Before we start looking into how these principles apply, let's look at the reason why distributed team exists in the first place. So distributed teams, these are fact of life. And some of the reasons why distributed team exists is, first is globalization. And organizations they're trying to expand into emerging markets. Also, there is a need for localization for the market. Then there is a constant pressure to reduce costs and make things cost effective. So we are talking about the value delivered for every dollar spent. For some teams, 24/7 availability is important to help rapid releases and provide rapid feedback from tests. Then also there are team size. So larger projects means larger team. It may not be possible to locate everyone in the same physical space, and that drives distribution of teams. Then merger and acquisitions are happening for organizations to be competitive, and those may exist in different locations. So distribution of team. And also there's a talent aspect of it. Not all the kind of specific roles and talents available in one single location, and that drives companies to drive to a distributed team situation. With distributed development, there are challenges, and there are challenges which is applicable to every role and for testing as well. So one of the challenges is around shared understanding of project goals, vision, status across teams in different locations. Then the other challenge is timely decisions, specifically in case of distributed teams. There are time zone differences, and that means that you'll have to wait unless the stakeholders are present. Stuff like defect triaging can't be done instantaneously, those kind of aspects. Then trust and rapport is not easy to build because of physical separation. Visibility in the progress of what each team is doing. Another challenge is common and consistent way of working. While these challenges exist for co-located team as well, but they've become much harder for distributed teams because of reduced communication bandwidth. So in a co-located team, you have chance of face-to-face conversation, hallway conversation, and all the informal way of communicating things. Because of now it happens over the wire. Those things are not possible. So those provide specific challenges for the team. There is increased noise in communication because physical separation increases noise. So emails sent from one location to other location without those visual, facial expressions, and someone who is there to interpret it for you when he drops into your cabin. Those situations is not available. So you tend to exchange a number of emails, a number of escalations which happens because of that. So the other one is resulting from cultural issues. So it's not just about being a different team, but there's different cultures to interpret things differently.
So now let's look at what are the different practices and tips that now we can use to try and resolve some of these issues or reduce some of the challenges that we see. The individual's human mind, the human psychology, plays a huge part when we interact with others. We most likely would interact and react differently with people in tough situations when they are face-to-face versus when they are in a different location. Here are a few things that can help bridge this gap. First is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, silly. That's what it really means. Many a times we unnecessarily try to complicate the situation too much. Maybe if we just take a step back, we realize it's not really as difficult as it looks, and let's try to reduce the complexities around it. We really need to keep an open mind when we are talking about interacting with people who are not in front of us. Cross-pollination by frequent rotation. Because the team members are not really the distributed teams, the team members on these do not interact as frequently face-to-face with each other. There are bound to be some conflicts, some misunderstandings that happen, and the only way that can really be bridged is by frequent rotation of team members between these teams. It could be for short periods or some extended periods too, depending on the context and the situation. Being positive. It always helps to start off by being positive, thinking of the glass being half full instead of half empty. That reduces a lot of problems in the first place. Trusting your team members and the other teams across over there. Not necessarily creating doubts unless there's evidence to do so. Again, it ties in very well with being positive. It's innocent until proved guilty. All these things really lead into one particular thing. Each person on each team needs to think of it as this is one product we are working for. This is one team. Just for some reasons, we have been split across in different locations. Next aspect is around communication. I've seen cases where people sitting in the same room, they communicate to each other over simple issues, trivial issues, over email because that's the process that has been set. We firmly believe about people over processes. What in this case can be done is instead of sending emails, why don't you just go and talk to that person? You don't have to wait for that person to open up his email and respond to you just for a yes or a no type answer. If that person is not there in the same room as you, another thing, there's a great invention called telephone. Pick up the telephone and just call. It again reduces the efforts, the delay caused by email communication. Of course, if the person is not in the same time zone, for example, then you set up recurring calls at a convenient time. It's always set up over there. And using that, you can have regular communication periodic communication and not just on an ad hoc basis. This keeps the interaction going. More than just telephone conversations, what helps more is having video conferencing. When you see a person on the other side, you are able to connect. You are able to not just put a face, you actually see the face on the other side. That really helps convey the correct thoughts, the emotions associated with those thoughts, which results in better resolution of those. A simple statement over email could be causing a lot of aggravation or frustration to the other. However, if you are talking, if you are doing video conferencing, such things do not need to happen. They can be resolved right there and there itself. In many cases, it may not be possible to just talk or even via video conferencing, express what the problem or the issue is being faced. In such cases, you can use pictorial representations to indicate what exactly do you mean by that. And last but not the least, in distributed teams, there has always been a case of sending status updates or having calls where you provide status updates. What has really helped is, in this case, I've shown an image from the movie Avatar, where Jake Sully, he's recording his video log on a daily basis. Now, this may seem like a very futuristic thing, but no, this is happening on a lot of projects. You have video status updates, but not just video status updates, you also tag it appropriately. You have a transcript associated with it, and then you send it across to the other teams where they can hear you talk what really went on, what issues were faced, what resolutions were done. And using the transcripts, it can also be searched over a period of time, and it's easier to retrieve that information. So communication, though seems very simple, it needs to be understood and made more effective. We've got the advantage of technology on our side. Are we really making full use of it? The next thing we get into is ATDD, Acceptance Test Driven Development. Very quickly, I shall just walk you through the process of what Acceptance Test Driven Development means. It does not necessarily mean you are doing automation before product or feature development. Yes, it can be extended into that, but this is not what we are talking about right now. What this means is there's a story planning session that is going on with the business stakeholders and the business analysts. When the business analysts and the QAs, they write the story and the scenarios together. The QAs, or in some cases the developers, first implement the automated acceptance tests. Then the functionality is being developed by the developers, which is verified maybe on a daily or a periodic basis by the BAs, the business analysts, and the QAs on the dev box itself. Then the BAs and the QAs will sign off the story on the dev box. The QAs will go off and finish off the story testing. There is a business showcase that happens where the business verifies, gets to see the functionality that they wanted and verifies it. And this thing repeats over and over again for each and every story. Eventually, the stories get into system testing where they are tested as part of the whole. Now, acceptance test-driven development comes in various different flavors. One is BDD, behavior-driven development. This is an example from a cucumber-based test scenario where you specify the requirement in very simple, explicit, easy-to-read language, non-technical language. Given the account is in credit and the card is valid and the dispenser contains cash, when the customer requests cash, then ensure a few other rules around the same. This is one way of specifying the acceptance criteria in the stories. Another way, as we spoke earlier, is having a pictorial representation of it. In some cases, the data that you're talking about is quite technical or has a lot of data associated itself, a lot of attributes and elements associated with it. So it becomes difficult to communicate across all the different roles in the team what exactly is required, what exactly are you talking about. In such cases, creating a pictorial representation of that makes it much more easier. And then there's a third form in which it's a free-form approach. You can create DSLs of your choice. This is being offered by a ThoughtWorks Studio product, Twist, where you can create the test specifications in the way you want to do, without the restrictions or limitations of any other framework. This is an actual example of what we have done for one of our projects, a very large project, for a leading online train ticket retailer in UK. The project, one of the projects in that big ecosystem was about printing a train reservation ticket. Now, the ticket has got many different attributes and elements associated with it. This project was being worked upon from 3 different locations: UK, Bangalore, and Pune. Now, when there was any communication that needed to happen across these teams for whatever reason, there was always a lot of confusion. What exactly are you talking about? Because this ticket, the XML that represents this ticket, has got a lot of attributes, a lot of fields, and it was being interpreted differently by different people, which caused a lot of frustrations and miscommunication for that matter. So what the team came up with was an easier depicted approach. They created a table out of that XML, which represented exactly the fields that the XML contained and how the ticket would be appearing. And using this approach, the communication problem was solved. You could say that the actual value over here is not coming up as expected, and everyone knows what you are really talking about at that point in time. Let's get now into test automation. Test automation itself is a very huge field. Each team would be doing test automation. We are not debating or talking about in this session about the value of test automation. We are assuming test automation exists on each of the teams. However, on distributed teams, it's not just a small project anymore. It's various different teams are using the same testing framework across projects. What are different things in the test automation aspect that can be done, which makes it easier to provide the fast feedback and ensure the quality is built into your product? The first thing to keep in mind is about the code quality of the test automation itself. The test code should be of production quality. The automation framework should be configurable. Because teams are there across in various different locations, there most likely is going to be a need to execute these tests against different environments. So it should be configurable to be able to do so easily. Because this is code, and it is supposed to be production quality code, we need to make use of proper design patterns to make sure this has been architected well. We need to make use of proper abstraction layers. Abstraction layers, for what you may ask, it's maybe to support executing a test against different browsers. or to make it run using various different drivers at the underlying layer, or to use different libraries itself. This framework should be extensible. Today, you have got just 10 features in your project. However, 2 months down the line, you may have 20 different features. How are you going to scale that up? The tests need to be executed by CI, the continuous integration. If you don't have that, then how are you going to make sure every check-in that happens from the developers, how are you going to validate the product code is of the good quality that is expected? The framework should be able to take screenshots on failures automatically. You don't need separate configuration for that. It needs to be built into your framework. And there should be good logging for the test. The logging is not just the test logs we are talking about. However, if there's a failure, there should be a way to capture the product logs, the snapshot of those logs, and keep it available whenever you inspect the results. These are just a few very high priority, high value things that we spoke about right now, which are really more applicable to distributed teams than just co-located teams. Along with this, there are various other things to consider in test automation. This slide would just be too small to talk about any of those. However, there are things like refactoring, evolving the framework, maybe having video recording as part of the test automation. If there's a failure, you all take a video snapshot and just save it over there. If the test passes, just discard that video. It helps a lot to reproduce the issues. Pairing the tools and utilities that can be used. The test data being decoupled from the test implementation itself. Some practices like no copy paste in the test framework. That adds to a lot of clutter in the code.
Now we are going to talk about the toolset. We are going to support the kind of approach we talked about in a distributed team context. So some of the characteristics of tool sets for distributed team is that they should add to crisp and clear communication. There should not be any extra overhead of traceability. Common tools for consistent usage across locations. Avoid information islands and be flexible. And all of these tools should work with each other. Otherwise, they will create information islands, as I spoke earlier. I'm going to look at some of the characteristics of testing tools which supports such kind of approach for a distributed team. The first and foremost is about having a DSL support. So DSL, by DSL I mean domain-specific language. So Anand showed you a few ways to express tests in acceptance test-driven development. Those were behavior-driven tests, some fit table, and any preform DSL as well, which can be used with the tools like Twist. So that's an important aspect that clearly adds to the communication across the roles and across the different locations. The other important aspect of a testing tool is tagging support. Tagging allows tests to align to features. Also, categorize tests by different features and speed of execution. And in general, this allows tests to be categorized and run in multiple conceivable ways. Another important thing about testing tool is how they help communicate test failures. Video recording, screenshot help a great deal in reducing any communication gap around test failures. They remove assumptions from the test failures. Along with video and screenshots, if the tools provide snapshot of logs and HTML source, etc., that helps development team to closely find and fix the issue. Next thing is about support for continuation integration. Many tools provide support for Ant and Maven, which allows tests to be hooked up in continuous integration pipeline. And that helps us to run the test, and again, when a change happens in the continuous build pipeline, and provide instant feedback. Also, there should be support for multiple drivers. When you are working on multiple locations on different projects, there are different interfaces which provide different challenges to testing, and the tools would support that. For example, you may, in one location, you are developing the front end, you might be using a tool like WebDriver. In other location, you may be using another front end, but that might be a rich internet application, a lot of flex, and so the same tool may not work there. Similarly, you might have interfaces like web services which don't exercise your application through UI.
Hey, Manish, can you give a large definition of what a driver is?
So a driver is something which drives the test, which does the interaction with the application. So, for example, WebDriver or Selenium or QTP largely allow you to do that interaction with the application. And so does that make it clear? So, other thing which we need to look at is exploratory testing support. Agile teams really thrive on exploratory testing support, and any help in expediting or making it efficient is really appreciated by the teams. So some support like semi-automation, automated way of supporting exploratory testing, where you can drive your application to a certain state by running some automation script, and thereafter you are doing manual scripts, and also providing a lot of video recording and in snapshot taking along with annotations helps exploratory testing. Some of the tools provide very good support for that. Twist, apart from the other things which I talked about, provides a great exploratory testing support as well. And there should be customization. So not all tools can be built for considering every conceivable situation, but the tools should allow to use different libraries or allow customization in itself. That allows team to use tools with the customization. The other thing, tool set which you should consider for distributed team, and that's a definite must, is continuous integration. So team sitting in different locations needs to have a common way to build, test, and deploy application. Everyone should be checking in the same source code repository. And once the check-ins are there in source code repository, continuous integration service pulls it, checks out the latest code, and then runs a build pipeline inside a factory. You could think of a factory which is compiling, doing a build verification test, deploying it to a QA environment, running a full regression test, deploying to a staging, and then publishing to a dashboard which is available to everyone and notifies to the committers as well. After that, it also creates a shrink wrap product which anyone can use and with a tagging. And that helps team to use one way of building, developing, deploying, and using the build artifacts. So there's no confusion. Moving on. The other thing to consider is a good project collaboration tool. Project collaboration tool should help you to track requirements, project status, test in a single location. It should have a common dashboard accessible to everyone. And every team member on a distributed team is interested to know what I need to do in relation to what everyone else is doing. So you see a picture of card wall in Mingle that allows every role across the location to see the same view, and that allows for project collaboration across and a consistent status of the project as well. Moving on, environments are really a very critical consideration for distributed teams. A deterministic and repeatable, self-contained, stuffed environment is essential. The reason being, many times third-party applications provide interesting challenges for testing, especially when environments are centrally managed, often not available 24/7. Sometimes the third-party applications are under development as well. And also, responses from them can't be controlled to execute specific test execution paths. So test automation, for example, can't work unless you have a deterministic and repeatable environment. And that's desirable. Another aspect of environment is building the redundancy for the environment. Multiple team means need for multiple showcases, demos, testing sessions, and these activities typically lock the environment for other teams, and they have to wait. So this is required, so some redundancy, so the others are not waiting, and they have environment to work on. Also, sometimes you want to run your test experiment in isolation from others. That helps you to do that. Coordinating to schedule environments is difficult for teams in different time zone and location, and that's the other reason you need to have a self-contained environment and also redundancy built around that. So same images for building environment. So no environment difference means overhead of understanding environment difference is reduced. So virtualization really helps distributed team where you can create images and can create environment on demand. Separate automation of execution environment because if it is being used by multiple people who are going to make changes to environment, it's going to affect test runs. Test automation sandpits to help authoring of test scripts. That's just looking at the efficiency of tester. If it's waiting for environment, probably is less productive. Moving on quickly. So distributing work. How should you distribute work? Should you distribute it by functional teams or division by role? That's not recommended in our view because that creates an over-the-wall symptom, and then people work in their own cubicles, never ready to step out and build a shared understanding. Instead, but distributing work in many situations is important. That should be done by feature. But there are cases where we have to do not just by feature. For example, in one of the projects which Anand spoke about, which is UK-based largest ticket retailing company, and there we have a situation where there is the sales part of it or the front end of application was developed in Bangalore. There is a fulfillment and settlement part happening in London, but the application needs to be tested end to end. The team, there was no talent available in London. Also, it was the interface was not completely testable. It was a legacy component. So we wanted to test from the front end of the retailing portal and test it through by printing the ticket and in the end. What we did is we did it from Bangalore. For doing that, we did an inception in London. Then we created a backlog, set up regular IPM showcases and demos to have a consistent view of the progress made by the team for all the project stakeholders, but primarily driven by in India at that point of time. There are other cases as well where we are trying to rewrite an application, technical rewrite of an application without changing the functionality. And this application was being developed in Atlanta. Before doing that rewrite, we needed to build a safety net for team to start its agile journey. And for that, we spent some time in Atlanta to understand the product, understand the build and deployment process, and then build a framework and brought back some of the work to India because in Atlanta there was not talent available, and having a new QA there was going to take 2-3 months time, and we needed to start that project very soon. So that was the situation where we have to bring some work to India to bolster effort on site.
So now, another set of practices that really help, this is more from an agile perspective, but it really adds tremendous value, is having regular, disciplined iteration planning meetings. These meetings should include all the team members in all the locations. The intention is clear. Everyone needs to know what the plan is, what is the purpose of why we are doing that work in the coming iteration or sprint, and what are the priorities for that. This is also a way for teams to bond, and this definitely needs to happen per iteration. It's not a big bang approach where you're having a planning meeting for 3 or 4 sprints at a time, or 3 or 4 months at a time. Also, a very important point over here is that the team members across different teams can identify features and functionality that is being developed or that needs to be developed, which could be cross-cutting, and how it impacts them. So that is the business plan, the iteration planning meetings. Another important aspect which needs to happen at the end of every iteration is a showcase. A showcase is to provide business the visibility into what has been developed and to ensure it is conforming to their standards, to their expectations. And last but not the least is retrospectives. Retrospectives is extremely essential to make sure we are evolving the process. We are not just following the process for the sake of following it because it is set in stone. No process should be set in stone. Retrospectives help us evolve that process and make it better for everyone on the team. To conclude, in a way, we've spoken about a lot of practices. All this really is to make sure we are working as one team. We have seen mindset, environments, communication, distributing work, tool set, acceptance test-driven development, test automation. There are a lot of other practices which we haven't spoken about, which clearly needs more time. Things like reporting and metrics, how to do better defects reporting that will be valuable across teams, non-functional requirements. Apart from these practices tips that we discussed, there are also certain things that hinder proper collaboration across teams. The main culprit is assumptions. It's about teamwork. Are you really thinking about this is one team that we are working for? Is there any transparency between the teams? Thinking about one location is more important or better than the other. And which results in the feeling that nobody cares about us anymore. Teams do get that feeling if that happens. We are now open to questions.